Welcome back to another PressConf primer, PressConf promo. We're still shopping. We're still workshopping the title here, Brent. Welcome back to PressConf. Today's guest, Brent Weaver, E2M Solutions, PressConf.events. That's the website, PressConf.events. Go there. April 8th through the 11th. Tempe, Arizona is where the business of WordPress will be discussed on stage, privately, not recorded, with your closest friends and colleagues in the WordPress space and beyond. Brent, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good to be here, Matt. Thank you.
For folks who don't know what you've been up to, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Brent Weaver. I'm currently CEO at E2M. We are a white label digital agency. We offer services across web, SEO, PPC, AI content, and company's been operating since 2012. I joined actually just about 10 months ago. So I'm 10 months on the job here at E2M.
And you've always been in WordPress, right? Just correct me if I'm wrong, but you are always helping WordPress agency owners and freelancers get accustomed to running their business. From your perspective, where does WordPress sit as that tool for building sites these days?
I mean, it's, whatever, the big stat, like 40% of the internet. I mean, I think in terms of digital agencies, I mean, I've been helping agencies really since probably 2010, a few years before I sold my first web agency. We started to do educational programs for different types of agencies and kind of went into the web agency space. And then that kind of morphed into like the web designer space, and that morphed into the web agency, and then kind of more broader. I feel like, agencies are digital agencies that do, full service or multi-service kind of stuff. So I think we have over 400 agency partners at E2M. And I mean, I'd say WordPress is some part of almost every one of those agencies. I attend a ton of agency owner events, both in WordPress and outside of WordPress. And I think every agency, even if they're like an e-commerce or Shopify agency, like they all have a little bit of WordPress that they do. And then there's obviously some agencies that are doing a ton of WordPress. So I think in terms of like, it's still very much a cornerstone of helping clients build a website, whether you're a paid media agency, an SEO agency, if you're a content agency. I think most businesses and agencies in this space have to work with WordPress at some level, some more than others.
Yeah. This. I'm going to front load this question with a short story, and I'm curious on your take on this. So there's another speaker at PressConf. We did our promo piece the other day, and he is an agency, and he's been running his agency, for like 15-ish years, but he's on the younger side. So he started young. And he says he primarily talks to people that are in like the VC-backed or Y Combinator space, right? Startups, California, San Francisco, and none of them want WordPress. They want Framer, they want Webflow. And he said something interesting to me, which hopefully you can appreciate, is he said that a lot of these customers, and he's an advocate. It's interesting because he's an advocate for WordPress. Like he wants WordPress to survive because he likes the open source ideals and community and all the stuff. But he said that a lot of these companies will start with a Framer or Webflow and then eventually hit this ceiling with that platform, whether technically challenging, like it doesn't scale anymore, or they can't do the things that they want to do with it. And his words were, and then they go and they hire somebody with gray hair to help them build WordPress. And I said, wait a minute.
We're a couple of dudes with gray hair, man.
And I said, wait a minute, what does that mean? Right. And then it dawned on me, right? And it dawned on me like, yeah, I get it. Like WordPress has an age problem. A lot of younger folks aren't using it. It's a little bit more on the technical side, but it also means like that sort of, we've seen some things, right? And we know how to solve these problems. And maybe that's the issue. These platforms are great for starting out, but WordPress can solve big stuff. It's not as beautiful like the framers and the Webflows coming in. It's not as sexy and as appealing, but when you actually need to get stuff done, WordPress can do it. So big front loaded question, like I said, but where do you see WordPress and its competency layer and its ability to solve things from all of the experience that you have?
I mean, it's like, kids not using Facebook or something,
Yeah.
and but then I look
Yeah.
at where our ad spend is, and it's Facebook, right? Like where
Right.
are the customers, right? Where are the people that
Right.
actually have money to spend money? Like, oh, they're all on Facebook, right? But apparently Facebook isn't popular anymore because the kids don't use it, right? It's like, well, kids don't have any money, so who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares what, are the startups using, those platforms because they're free and cheap and whatever? It's like quick. And I mean, I think we're also seeing with vibe coding, right? Lovable, other tools like that, right? We can throw up a quick website on React or whatever and have no CMS whatsoever and just vibe code the updates and vibe code the content updates. And I think that certainly is creating a new entry point where you have these technologies that you can build a website in, a matter of a couple of hours, right? But then to your point, once those websites actually have real business problems that they have to solve, like we have real traffic coming to the website, we have to have some type of commerce. Those websites have any kind of dynamic component to them. If you're working in an environment where you have multiple developers, right? We know right now with AI, having like a whole development team work on one code base at the same time on a vibe coded environment, like those things. I'm not saying that it won't happen, but it's not there yet. And so, you have something where, I mean, we have 120 WordPress developers at E2M, and some very large projects that we're working on, we might have 5 or 6 WordPress, whether it's front end, back end developers working on a project simultaneously. And I think, when you get into those types of environments, those more complex business cases, I'm not saying that WordPress is always the answer to there. I mean, there's other open source CMSs, there's proprietary CMSs that handle very specialized things. But we certainly see, still lots of opportunity in there. And then the other thing is you have this huge user base, right? So you have people that are going to come to the table and they're going to want WordPress for many, many years, right? And so, I mean, that's, if you just think about like 40% of the internet, like, I mean, that's not going anywhere, right? I mean, it's like, even if there was a new search engine that was 10 times as good as Google, like, people are still going to use Google kind of for decades. I think, where does WordPress play? I mean, I think it still plays very well with like very small, lightweight, websites for local businesses and all the way up. I do think that there's certainly more competition that's, chipping at the heels of WordPress, both specialized CMS systems. But, it's funny, you get into that and we see it happen a lot where you have somebody that starts with a proprietary CMS and they're having to pay a hosted solution. And there's a lot of, and I have certainly a big history with hosted SaaS solutions prior to founding UGurus, kind of in the business catalyst space. And then, what happens is, there's some crazy stuff that can happen, right? I mean, we kind of all know what happened with Adobe and Business Catalyst, right? Like, and I think there are these systems that, even if they're backed by billion-dollar publicly traded companies, somebody can make a decision in a boardroom like that, and it can go away. So I think there's some really cool platforms out there. Obviously, like on the e-com side, I mean, Shopify, they're not going anywhere, right? But there's also been decisions that Shopify has made that has had a direct and material impact on the businesses that host and build on Shopify, right? I mean, there's that kind of stuff. I think for people that want flexibility, I think that people that want control, I think that people that want to have that ownership of their assets and not have that be so dependent on other people, I think WordPress will obviously continue to have significant market share there. Now, I think there's some things going on in the WordPress market that maybe we could cover on a different episode or maybe a press conf. I mean, I think for us, at least internally, and I guess what I'm talking about at press conf is like the existential threat that AI is bringing into, the WordPress agency and the WordPress development work. I mean, we have a pretty big AI squad right now. We have 50 dedicated AI team members just doing AI services for clients. We have a team now we just created of about 16 who their sole purpose right now is to focus on AI enhanced builds for new projects, for ACF based projects, as well as Elementor-based projects, and their whole mandate is to essentially see how much of new builds can be, how much of our own business can we cannibalize, right? Which,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't. It feels a little bit like Netflix going after their DVD business with streaming, right? It feels like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
like, you limit somebody to, the old model was you get 2 DVDs at a time. The new model is you can binge watch everything you want and have, 500 watching hours in a month if you really feel like it, right? Versus,
Yeah.
you're not going to watch, the same 2 DVDs for 500 hours in a month, right? So you have this, I think we're on the cusp of like a little bit of an existential crisis, not necessarily in WordPress, but in the companies that build and support WordPress,
Yeah.
which is something that we're navigating.
Yeah, this whole like trust factor with AI, and again, yeah, this is like a whole other conversation. But I do have a question about that. One, well, this is just a side comment. Who is a famous software founder who built a secondary company to compete against themselves to see if it was a better product? Is it FreshBooks? Might have been FreshBooks, but I remember some like storied entrepreneur of like
he had
a big
an incumbent platform.
Yeah, they had their
probably
platform,
had a lot
and they
of
said
technical debt and a lot of weight,
yes.
right?
Yeah, and he peeled off a whole team to build a really elite team to build a secondary product that competed against themselves, and everyone loved the secondary product. God, I wish I remember off the top of my head. Anyway, point
That's
is,
probably a good case study. Yeah.
Yeah, with the AI stuff, how are you leaning into that with the expectations with the customer? For example, the agency owner of old, customer came knocking on the door. They said, "Hey, we want this feature, we want that feature, we want the website to do that." Typically, you sat down, you scoped it, you said, "Okay, it's whatever, $5,000 for us to make this change," and the rules were written like, here's what we're going to do for that $5,000. If you come at me with something else, we're going to have to bill against that again. With AI, I feel like the expectation from customers might be like, well, you can just do this in an hour. Like, how much could you charge me? And then just keep throwing stuff at you. How do you get to that negotiation of, we're going to do it with AI, but it still needs to be spot checked. It still needs to be a little bit of human interaction here. We're not just doing the stuff, throwing the code at you. Like, there's got to be some level of trust here. What does that look like with E2M and how you're framing that with customers?
I mean, we have some extraordinary data available because we have, somewhere in the ballpark of, like, let's call it 30,000 billable hours in a given month across all of our business units. And all of those, our team is doing lots and lots of tasks. So we can see what tasks are being done. And we have that data, and we have now a team that's analyzing all of that data to determine, right, what parts of the WordPress development lifecycle, as well as like SEO and PPC, but like WordPress development lifecycle, what is well positioned for AI and what's not. So, for example, if we have a site that's been online for 6 years, it's mission critical for a business. That business maybe is a $10 million a year, whatever, right? And they have this website that is morphed and evolved, and there's been like 5 agencies that have worked on it. And there's, we can just imagine what the plugins look like, what the code looks like, right? And they send us like a task that's like, fix this little, hey, we want this little change on XYZ, page or widget or whatever, right? And their expectation is that's going to be a 30-minute, less maybe 15-minute task, right? It's like somebody that's got some awareness of that client and that project is going to open it up, and they're going to go in there and they're going to make that change, right? Those types of tasks, at least based on the tech that's available right now, not super great for AI. One reason is because you've got to have somebody that intakes that task to begin with. They've got to look at it. They've got to see what's going on. There's a code base that exists. There's all sorts of dependencies and little things that, an AI isn't going to go in today and analyze all of that and understand those dependencies, right? They're going to have a much narrower context window to do that change, right? So those kind of maintenance things, at least right now, not really that great for AI, right? Maybe somebody will change that with OpenClaw or some type of Claude code with bigger context window or whatever, right? Who knows? The new builds, though, Certainly there's a little bit more interesting opportunity there because we're starting from ground zero. We're starting from scratch. So, I think in that way, AI can build the site how it kind of wants. And as long as that site is editable and manageable by somebody else, they can kind of finish the 50%. So we're seeing that that's a really good opportunity for us to look at. Now, you bring up a good point, right? Like, how do you communicate? Like, has the value to the client changed for a project just because somebody's using AI? Like, I don't think so, right? Now, they might say over time, if somebody else can do it for cheaper, then obviously that's going to put some price pressure, right? You're going to have more supply. People can more easily create this stuff. It might create some downward price pressure, but theoretically, the value should not change just because you're using AI for it. We are seeing some people, they'll go out there and sell WordPress projects from, hey, we're going to use AI to build this. Maybe they tell the client that, maybe they don't. They get into a scope of work. Let's say they go sell a project for $50,000 and they're like, I'm just going to vibe code this, right? And they get like 60% of the way through. And what happens is they're so out of, the AI has created something that is out of that person's technical depth. And this is where herein lies like the rub, right? Is amazing at getting it to 60%. But then what do you do from 61% to 100%, right? If you don't have that technical expertise, then the fact that you used AI to get it to 60% doesn't actually matter, right? You've saved all this time, but ultimately you can't finish the project. So the value of a 60% completed project is actually zero, right? I mean, unless you have somebody else that can kind of pick it up, right? So I think with one thing that we're kind of looking at is how do we build our model around that expert 40%? And what you end up with is actually, to get that last 40%, you end up needing more senior level people, you need more experienced people. I don't know if we have time for a quick story, but this analogy that I heard, and it wasn't in this context, but it was a gentleman by the name of Will Reynolds. He's a big guy in the SEO space.
Yeah. Yep.
He was out in I think it was like the Sierra Nevada or something. And he looked on his GPS, right? He was getting directions. And it was like from where he was at to his destination was like an hour. And he was like, oh, like not a big deal, right? He looked at his gas tank. He had like a half a tank, right? He was like, I'll just, he's kind of a little hungry, a little thirsty, right? He's like, I'll just wait until I get to my destination. It's only an hour away. Not a big deal, right? So, because he's just looking at his GPS, never been there, doesn't know the area, right? Doesn't have the experience, right? So he embarks on his journey, right? About 20 minutes in, blizzard hits, right? All of a sudden, 2-3 feet of snow, whiteout conditions. His car gets stuck. There's nobody there. Cell phone is dead. No reception. Can't communicate with anybody, right? In a blizzard, 8 hours later, he arrives at his destination. Tank is on empty, like shaking hands, right? Like almost felt like he almost didn't make it from like a human survival kind of standpoint, right? He was in the middle, like 8 hours later, almost ran out of gas, no food, starving, probably was close to just making like a bad decision, right? And that is, to me, a perfect metaphor of what's happening with people with AI. They look at it, they look at it on the lovable, like, oh, this is going to be easy, right? They get 60% of the way in, 40% of the way in, and then they're out of their technical depth, right? So, and then what happens is, right, they got to go to a couple of dudes with gray hair, and they go, we got stuck, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because we are getting that pressure, Matt, of people have an expectation of things being more efficient, right? They should take less time. Right? And how do you, as an agency, something that I'm going to talk about at PressConf is how do you, as an agency, validate making a huge CapEx expense investment in both the hard technology costs of the AI tooling, right? I mean, Claude Code, these things, they're not expensive if I'm a one developer, right? We have 120 developers, right? If you give a Claude Code license to 120 people, that's $10,000 a month, right? That's an actual, that's real money, right? That's a 6-figure annual investment to bring that onto your team. And the output of that is not going to be more billable time. It's going to be less billable time, right? And so you're like, okay, I'm going to make this big investment. My revenue might actually go down. Now, our assumption is you're going to have you're going to be able to complete more work and maybe more complex work, right? I think we're going to see the amount of volume go up. I think clients typically have more desires than they have budget. And so AI, I think, is going to help us to deliver on more of those desires for the same budget, which I think is hopefully going to be really exciting. But we're going to talk a little bit. There's some things that I don't want to say on a public podcast that I'll say at PressConf about that switch and how we're kind of dealing with the AI transition internally.
Yeah, and that's why we go to PressConf, folks, because these talks are not recorded, and you're going to get a ton of great insights from folks like Brent. Again, pressconf.events. That's where you can pick up on the rest of Brent's story. So we'll leave that as the cliffhanger of what he's going to talk about there. Yes, AI and how this all rolls into agency stuff is going to be a big talking point, I think, around the snack shack and in the halls of PressConf. So definitely come. Brent, thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for sharing a little bit of your knowledge, and we look to pick up on that at the event. Where can folks go to say thanks to you? Where can they go to learn more about E2M?
Sure. Certainly for learning more about E2M, go to2msolutions.com. Just check us out. You can always follow me on LinkedIn. I'm just LinkedIn/IN/Brent Weaver. And you can message me, connect with me there. And hopefully if you're coming to PressConf, definitely reach out on LinkedIn and say hi. Would love to meet up with you at the event.
Fantastic stuff. Everybody else, pressconf.events. Get your tickets now. We'll see you at the event.